Hello friends, welcome to my channel, and in this session we are going to discuss about the anatomy of the thoracoabdominal diaphragm, and we are going to discuss under following headings. First we will see the definition, shape, the parts, origin and insertion of the diaphragm as it is a muscular partition, and we are going to discuss about the openings in the diaphragm, both major and minor, and structure passing through them, and lastly neurovascular supply with development and applied aspects. So the diaphragm is a muscular partition separating the thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity. It divides the trunk into two parts, and not only it separates the cavities of the trunk, but it also separates the disorders of the thoracic cavity from the disorders of the peritoneal cavity or abdominal cavity. Coming to definition, it's a musculo-aponeurotic sheet separating thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity. Shape, it is dome shaped with two cupola. It has right and left domes, and the summit of these convexities which are extending into the thoracic cavity are called as cupola. And coming to the parts, it has a central tendinous part and a peripheral muscular part. As you notice here, the diaphragm is a dome shaped muscular partition here. It separates the thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity, and it has two domes, that is right and left domes with a depressed area in between. So right dome is slightly higher than the left dome because of the presence of the lever, you can notice there. And a summit here, they are called as the cupola of the diaphragm. And coming to the origin, as we have defined the diaphragm as the musculo-aponeurotic partition, so it separates the thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity. So the bony covering of the thoracic cavity is thoracic cage formed by sternum, ribs and vertebrae. So diaphragm lies in the lower part of the thoracic cage. So it has origin from the sternum, the sternal part, ribs, costal part and the lumbar part. So it takes origin from the bones of the thoracic cage, that is sternum, ribs and vertebrae. So the vertebrae means lumbar vertebrae here, not thoracic vertebrae. So it takes origin from the posterior surface of the sternum and 7 to 12 ribs, lower 6 ribs and the lumbar vertebrae. The upper 2 to 3 lumbar vertebrae have their contribution in the origin of the thoracoabdominal diaphragm. And you can notice here the domes, the right side is higher than the left side with a central depressed part, because the right side you are having the lever. Most of the lever is under cover of the right side thoracic cage that we have discussed in the previous video in the anatomy of the liver. Please go through that. Next, coming to the origins, as we have already to sternal part from the posterior surface of the xiphoid process, the costal part, that is from the ribs, the lower 6 ribs, and you can notice here the sternal part, you can notice posterior surface of the xiphoid and the lower 6 ribs, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 10, 11 and 12. So these ribs have the contribution, and it also take origin from the vertebra. You can see by way of crus, right crus taking origin from the upper 3 lumbar vertebra, left crus from the upper 2 lumbar vertebra, and it also has contribution from the fascias covering the posterior abdominal wall muscles. Like here you can see psoas major, psoas fascia is there, then quadratus lumborum covered by the anterior layer of thoracolumbar fascia. So it is a musculo-aponeurotic sheet having the origin from the this sternum, ribs, vertebrae and fascias, and it inserts into a central trefoil leaf shaped part, that is tendinous part. So muscle fibers coming from all around these bony parts and facial parts, they go and insert and form a flat tendon that is called as central tendon or central tendinous part. That's why the parts of the diaphragm are described as the central tendinous part and peripheral muscular part. So origin is to the central tendon. So coming to the lumbar involvement. So I told you it takes origin from the lumbar vertebra as two crus, two crura. That is the right crus, and here is the left crus. Right crus and left crus. You can notice here. Right crus takes origin from the upper three lumbar vertebra, whereas left crus from the upper two lumbar vertebra. So you also have the medial arcuate ligament and lateral arcuate ligament. Medial arcuate ligament is the thickening of the psoas fascia covering the psoas major muscle, and lateral arcuate ligament is the thickening of the anterior layer of thoracolumbar fascia. So medial arcuate ligament is thickening of psoas fascia covering the psoas major muscle here. Psoas fascia is there, and then quadratus lumborum, that is the lateral arcuate ligament, medial arcuate ligament, medial and lateral. Medial, so medial is thickening of the psoas fascia, lateral is thickening of the anterior of thoracolumbar fascia, whereas the median arcuate ligament, it surrounds the aortic opening here between the right and left crus. So these are the three ligaments: the median arcuate ligament, medial arcuate ligament, and lateral arcuate ligament. Median arcuate ligament is single, whereas medial and lateral arcuate ligaments are paired on the either side of the aortic opening. So that is about the vertebral origin of the diaphragm. You can notice there, and here you can see clearly the right side, the right crus is more heavier and longer, left one is shorter. Maybe the right crus is longer and heavier because it has to dislodge a heavier lever which is on the right side. It has to dislodge the lever during the inspiration. That's why the right crus may take origin from the upper three lumbar vertebra compared to the left crus, which is taking origin from the anterior surface of the body of the upper two lumbar vertebra. So you can notice here, this is the origin and insertion of the diaphragm. The central tendon is a trefoil leaf shaped part, as you are seeing from the below here. Between the median and right part of this trefoil leaf, you will see vena cava opening, and behind central tendon in the muscular part, esophageal opening. Behind the diaphragm, between the right and left crus, you are seeing aortic opening. So vena cava opening, esophageal opening, and aortic opening. So these are the three openings you will see. So these are the major openings: vena cava, esophageal, and aortic. You are seeing it from the thoracic side here. So this is the posterior side, this is the anterior side here. So vena cava opening is roughly quadrilateral, esophageal is elliptical, aortic is round. They present at the different level. Let us see that. You can notice here, if you see in the sagittal section, the vena cava opening lies at the level of T8, esophageal at the T10, and aortic at the T12, because diaphragm is a dome shaped partition. It is a dome shaped partition, convexity towards the thoracic cavity. And when you see here in the animation, if you zoom and try to see here, this is the diaphragm. You can notice the central trefoil leaf shaped tendon and peripheral muscular part. They are taking the origin from the part of the thoracic cage, that is from the posterior surface of the body of the sternum via two slips. You can see two fleshy slips coming from there. You can notice here, these are the two fleshy slips coming from there, and This is how it looks when you isolate the diaphragm. Here you are seeing the right crus and left crus, and this is the view from above. You are noticing the two domes. The left side dome is higher than the right side dome is higher than the left side, maybe due to lever. You can notice here how the fibers run from the lower 6 ribs towards the central tendon, and also two fleshy slits coming from the sternum, posterior surface of the xiphoid process of the sternum. Remaining fibers are coming from these ribs, and there is contribution from the lumbar vertebrae in the form of left crus and right crus. So it takes origin from the sternum, ribs, and lumbar vertebrae. And if you see here, the the right crus takes origin from the L1, L2, L3, whereas left from the L1 and L2 vertebra. And they both the crust join and form this median arcuate ligament. Median arcuate ligament in front of the aortic opening. In front of the aortic opening, as you can see here, in the tendinous part you are seeing a quadrilateral opening, that is the vena cava opening, and in the muscular part you are seeing the elliptical opening, that is the esophageal opening, and just behind the diaphragm you are seeing the rounded aortic opening here. And you will notice this fascia here. This is the medial arcuate ligament, thickening of the psoas fascia. Then you will see lateral arcuate ligament, thickening of the anterior layer of thoracolumbar fascia. So medial arcuate ligament is thickening of the psoas fascia, covering the psoas major. Lateral is thickening of the anterior layer of thoracolumbar fascia, covering the quadratus lumborum. So these are the ligaments there, medial and lateral arcuate ligaments, and one median arcuate ligament connecting right crus and left crus in front of the aortic opening. So this is in the left side you are seeing, that is psoas minor muscle. You can see this is the medial arcuate ligament, this is the lateral arcuate ligament, this is the left crus here, and here you will notice the median arcuate ligament, medial lateral arcuate ligament. So these are the ligaments or thickening of the fascias related to the diaphragm. And this is the inferior surface of the diaphragm when you view from below. So you can notice there central tendinous part and peripheral muscular part. And as you go here, again viewing the inferior surface of diaphragm from below, you are noticing the central tendinous part here, the central tendinous part, trefoil leaf shaped with the right and left domes. Right dome is higher than the left one. And if you see the origin of the diaphragm, it has the sternal origin, costal origin. Sternal origin is from the posterior surface of the xiphoid process. The costal origin is from the lower 6 ribs, you can notice there, and also from the contribution is there from the lumbar vertebrae in the form of right and left crus. Right crus is longer, left crus is short. The major openings in the diaphragm, first one is vena cava opening. It is located in the central tendon at the level of T8 vertebra. Shape is roughly quadrilateral. Structure passing through it are inferior vena cava, right phrenic nerve, and lymphatics. And the effect of the contraction of diaphragm, it dilates, so it helps in the increased venous return. Next, coming to the esophageal opening, it is located in the muscular part that you can notice here. It is located in the muscular part of the diaphragm at the level of T10. Shape is roughly elliptical. Structure passing through it are esophagus itself, anterior and posterior vagal trunk, branches of the left gastric artery. I can say esophageal branch of left gastric artery, lymphatics from the liver, and phrenicoesophageal ligament. And the effect of the diaphragm contraction, it will constrict. So during the respiration, it prevents the regurgitation of the food from the stomach to the esophagus and prevents the aspiration. And next, coming to the aortic opening, it located behind the diaphragm at the level of T12, and shape is roughly rounded. Structure passing through it are not the esophagus, abdominal aorta, azagos vein, and thoracic duct. And the effect of the contraction is no change because it lies behind the diaphragm, behind the median arcuate ligament. And you can summarize the major openings under the table with the subheadings like location, level, shape, structure passing, and effect of contraction. If you see vena cava, location is central tendon, esophageal is muscular part, aortic is behind diaphragm, level, vena cava is at T8, esophageal is T10, aortic is T12, shape is vena cava is roughly quadrilateral, esophageal is elliptical. E for E, you can remember that aortic is rounded because O is there in aorta, it is rounded. Structure passing through vena cava opening are inferior vena cava, right phrenic nerve and lymphatics. Esophageal opening are esophagus, anterior and posterior vagal trunks, esophageal branch of left gastric artery, lymphatics from liver, which connect with the thorax and mammary gland, phrenicoesophageal ligament, and structure passing through aortic opening are, you can remember as AAT, as aorta, azagos vein, and thoracic duct. Effect of the contraction, vena cava dilates, venical opening dilates, helps in the venous return. Esophageal opening constricts, prevent the regurgitation of the food from the stomach to the esophagus. Aortic opening doesn't change because it lies behind the diaphragm. So you can notice here the three openings. Vena cava opening is in the whitish part, indicating it is in the tendinous part. The esophageal opening is elliptical and is present in the brownish part, indicating it is in the muscular part, whereas aortic opening is behind the diaphragm. You can notice the aortic opening is behind the median arcuate ligament formed between the right crus and left crus. So you can see the major openings here. What are the major openings? And you can notice here, if you go from anterior to posterior, first you are seeing the vena cava opening. Passing through it is the inferior vena cava and right phrenic nerve along with the lymphatics. Whereas esophageal opening, esophagus, anterior vagal trunk there, and posterior vagal trunk there. You can see the branches, they are supplying the stomach along with the esophageal branch of the left gastric artery, lymphatics from the liver, and also the phrenicoesophageal ligament. And aortic opening, you can see abdominal aorta, azagos vein, and thoracic duct. The aortic opening, you can see there the structures, these three structures lie behind the diaphragm here. They are not passing through the diaphragm, they are lying behind the diaphragm. Abdominal aorta, azagos vein, and thoracic duct, AAT, because they are lying behind diaphragm between the right and left crus. The ligament joining the right and left crus is median arcuate ligament. So aortic opening is lying behind the median arcuate ligament. Right side has a right crus, left side left crus, and posteriorly T12 vertebra. So these are the boundaries of the aortic opening. And coming to the minor openings, so between the sternal and costal fibers, you will see Larry space. If it is enlarged pathologically, we call it as foramen of Morgagni. And structure passing through it is superior epigastric vessels. And the lower 5 intercostal nerves and vessels pass between the origin and the ribs. And behind lateral arcuate ligament, you can see some structures will pass there. The subcostal vessels and all, and behind the middle ligament symphytic trunk, and what is this foramen of Moragni? The enlarged Larry space between the sternal and costal origin that we call as foramen of Moragni. Foramen of Bogdalek, that is the pathological opening due to deficiency in the development of the pleuroperitoneal fold. So here there will be deficiency in the diaphragm, so that the abdominal contents will herniate into thorax, causing diaphragmatic hernia. Coming to the blood supply of the diaphragm, so it is supplied by the musculophonic artery, branch of the intrathoracic, pericardiophonic artery, also branch of the intrathoracic, lower 5 to 6 intercostal arteries, and superior phonic artery. It is the last branch of the thoracic aorta, and also inferior phonic artery, which is the first branch of the abdominal aorta. Coming to nerve supply, the sensory nerve supply is in the central tendon by the phrenic nerve, because heart lies there. The entire pericardium, fibrous pericardium, is derived from septum transversum along with the central tendon. The nerve of septum transversum is phrenic nerve, whereas the peripheral muscular part is by the intercostal nerves and subcostal nerves. Sympathetic supply is from the celiac plexus via inferior phrenic plexus. It maintains the tone of the diaphragm. That's why it doesn't fatigue, even though it is a skeletal muscle. Diaphragm is a skeletal muscle or a striated muscle. It doesn't fatigue. You never feel fatigue when you inspire or expire, because the sympathetic plexus supplying the diaphragm maintains the tone of the muscle. That phenomenon is called as the Orbelis phenomena. Orbelis phenomena. It maintains the tone of the diaphragm. That's why even though diaphragm is a voluntary striated skeletal muscle, it doesn't fatigue, because the tone is maintained by the sympathetic supply. The motor supply is obviously by the phrenic nerve, C4 and C5. Action. So what is the action of the diaphragm? It is the primary inspiratory muscle. It is the primary inspiratory, or we can say principal muscle of inspiration. It increases the vertical diameter of the thoracic cage whenever it during inspiration. It contracts and descends, dislodging the abdominal organs like liver, spleen, and other organs related to diaphragm, and increasing the vertical diameter of the thoracic cage so that lungs expand. And as it descends and becomes stable, the central tendon becomes stable, the ribs move upwards and outwards, increasing the anteroposterior diameter and also the transverse diameter. So usually the diaphragm moves around 1.5 to 2 centimeter. That is, it descends in the quiet respiration, but in case of forced respiration or heavy work, it can dislodge up to 6 to 10 centimeters. And the area of diaphragm is 270 square centimeters. It maintains the tidal volume, and when diaphragm descends, there is increase in the intra-abdominal pressure, and there is a negative intrathoracic pressure, which helps in the increased venous return and helps in the inspiration. So it is the principal muscle of the inspiration. First, it increases the vertical diameter. Once the central tendon stabilizes, it also increases the anteroposterior and transverse diameter of the thoracic cage. So this is about the diaphragm, and it's also involved in the increasing the intra-abdominal pressure during the sternous activities like defecation and micturition. So basically it is related to the increased intra-abdominal pressure and negative intrathoracic pressure. So that is the action of diaphragm. So we can say everybody sings from the diaphragm, because while singing you need inspiration. The sound is produced during expiration. Coming to the development of the diaphragm, so already we have known anteromedian part, that is the central tendon containing the vena cava and esophageal opening, developed from the septum transversum. Septum transversum is the undivided mesoderm lying cranial to pericardial sac before the head fold, and yes, it's a sheet of mesoderm lying caudal to pericardial sac after the head fold. Before the head fold, it lies cranial to the pericardial sac. Please refer the development of the gastrointestinal tract, the introductory session. We have discussed about the folding, and during the second month it migrates from C2 to L1 to attain the adult position, but carries the phrenic nerve. That's why phrenic nerve travels all the way from the neck to the this junction between the thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity. And you can notice here this is the posterior part, this is the anterior part. The central tendon, most of it is there from septum transversum, and here you can see this is the mesoesophageal part, and remaining part is covered by the pleuroperitoneal folds. They will all join, and peripheral muscular part is derived from the body valve. And if there is no pleuroperitoneal fold, there will be deficiency that we call it as phenomenon of Bok-Deluxe, leading to Bok-Deluxe hernia. And you can see between the esophageal and aortic opening, it is derived from the dorsal mesentery of the esophagus called as mesoesophagus. It gives rise to crura of diaphragm, right and left, whereas the peripheral part is derived from the shelf-like projection of the body valve. They give rise to skeletal part or muscular part of the diaphragm. You can notice here. So the central tendinous part is from the septum transversum. This part is from the dorsal mesoesophagus, and posterolateral part is by the pleuroperitoneal folds, and peripheral part is by the mesoderm of the body valve. So septum transversum, mesoesophagus, pleuroperitoneal fold, and the body valve. These are the four contributions for the development of the adult diaphragm. And the pleuroperitoneal openings will be patent. They are situated dorsal to the septum transversum, and they communicate between the pleura and peritoneum. And each opening is closed by the pleuroperitoneal membrane or fold, which is cut from the body wall caudal to the growth of the lung buds. And as the membrane drops ventrally, carrying the gonads, suprarenal and mesophagus beneath it, membrane fuses with the septum transversum and also with the mesoesophagus, which is the dorsal mesentery of the esophagus. So subsequently, the myotome from the septum transversum spread over the membrane and cover it into muscular part. So this is the development of the diaphragm. Remember the four contributions: septum transversum, mesoesophagus, pleuroperitoneal fold, and also from the muscular growth from the body wall. Now let us see the video of the development of the diaphragm. First there will be formation of the intraembryonic xylem. You are seeing the embryonic germ disc from above, and this is the transverse section where you can see the three germ layers: ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. And mesoderm is again divided into three parts. There's a formation of the neuroectodermal tube, neural tube, and you can notice, and the lateral plate mesoderm, which is here, it is now divided into somatic part and splanchnopleurotic part. And there is appearance of these coelomic cavities, so they form a common horseshoe shaped intraembryonic xylem. You can see there, that is the intra-embryonic xylem, and you can see the primitive pericardial cavity lies near the head end, and you can notice there is the communication between the extra-embryonic xylem and the intra-embryonic xylem. The yellow arrow indicates the extra-embryonic xylem, whereas white arrow indicates the intra-embryonic xylem. They both communicate. Now in sagittal section, if you see here, you can notice the horseshoe shaped intraembryonic xylem. This is the horseshoe shaped intraembryonic xylem, what you are observing there. So you can see this part forms the future pericardial cavity, pleural cavities. These are peritoneal cavities which are in a single intraembryonic xylem. You can notice the septum transversum here. This is the buccopharyngeal membrane. This is the developing heart. This is the foregut from which you will see laryngotracheal diverticulum. The two lung buds develop and enter here in the future pleural cavity. This is the pericardial cavity. Heart will invaginate from above and behind, and this is the future peritoneal cavity. This is how the intraembryonic xylem is formed or positioned. You can see that is the communication between the intraembryonic and extraembryonic xylem, which will be cut off soon. So this is the intraembryonic xylem forming the future body cavities. So folding in the transverse plane, that is in the lateral folds, you can see there. Yes, this is the again the formation of neural tube and all, and you can see here how the lateral plate mesoderm will split to form this splanchnopleuric layer and somatopleuric layer. You can notice here, this is the splanchnopleuric layer which covers the part, and somatopleuric layer. So this is how the body cavity, the intraembryonic xylem, is formed. So this is how the peritoneal cavity, formation of the pericardial cavity and pleural cavities. So this is the pericardial cavity, and here will be pleural cavities. From here you will see the laryngotracheal diverticulum forming two lungs. So lungs will invaginate here and here into the pleural cavity. You can notice there. And there is a separation of the pleural and pericardial cavities during the 5th week. If you see there, so this is how the horseshoe shaped the primitive intraembryonic xylem is visible, and as the lungs invaginate medially and heart will invaginate from above and behind, the formation of pericardial and pleural cavities, and the formation of diaphragm and the development of diaphragm separates the pleural cavities and peritoneal cavity. You can notice there, that is the septum transversum. This is mesoesophagus, and here you can see the body wall on the sides. So these are pleuroperitoneal openings there, and because of the formation of the pleuroperitoneal folds which fuse with the septum transversum, the formation of diaphragm completes there. So with the openings for the big structures like vena cava, esophagus and aorta. So then diaphragm descends from the neck to the thoracoabdominal junction with the descent of the heart and lung buds. but carrying the nerve supply from the neck, that is the phrenic nerve. So this is about the development of diaphragm. Remember, it developed from the septum transversum, dorsal mesoesophagus, body wall, and pleuroperitoneal folds. But sometimes the pleuroperitoneal membrane fails to close the pleuroperitoneal opening, resulting in a triangular gap between the costal and vertebral origins of the diaphragm, that is in the posterior part. And through this gap, there is a herniation and there's a communication between the peritoneal and pleural cavities and cause diaphragmatic hernia. Phenomena of Morgagni, that is an enlarged Larry's space. Usually there is a normal space between the sternal and costal origin of the diaphragm, and sometimes the coils of intestine with peritoneal sac may enter into thorax through this opening. And one more hernia is esophageal hernia. It is due to congenitally short part of the stomach, because esophagus undergoes elongation during the development. If it doesn't elongate, there will be esophageal hernia. And you can notice there on the left side, you can see there is a gap, that is absence of pleuroperitoneal membrane, resulting in the herniation of the abdominal contents into the thorax. The fetus will be stillborn because the lungs won't expand after the first cry because of this herniation. So you can see here coils of the intestine herniating into the thoracic cavity compared to the normal baby, which is complete here. And there will be hiatal hernia, sliding and rolling hernias, where the esophagogastric junctions herniate into the thoracic cavity. You can see rolling hernia, part of the fundus herniates through the opening in the diaphragm. In the sliding hernia, the junction will enter into thorax. So this is about the development of diaphragm and the applied aspects. Thank you. If any suggestions, please comment in the comment box. Thank you very much.